Hi guys, how are you? We are here with People's Bodega. How are you guys doing today? Great.
Very good.
That's great. Yeah, today was such a beautiful day. I feel like great day to be outside. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Um, so we're like a free mobile supply mutual aid unit that operates out of a 14-foot converted box truck in New York City. We started the project back in early June, in the beginning of the George Floyd uprising. And then it continued and developed. We kind of all knew each other through our local mutual aid networks and came together to start this. And we began the project by just sort of following around protests in vans and giving out things like water and supplies and food and safety gear and informational packets and stuff about like legal aid and like what to do if you got pepper sprayed and stuff like that. And then, as we continued, it got bigger and bigger, and we started doing more sort of like self-determined mutual aid projects, partnering with different food pantries and outreach programs, collecting and redistributing supplies to people around the city, and aligning ourselves with different causes and groups and organizations of like-minded people. So that's kind of where we started and where we're at right now.
How did you guys grow?
Volunteer-run organization.
Oh yeah, we don't do any money. We don't believe in money unless someone gives it to us, and then we spend it on them. Mm-hmm. Sorry, what was your question?
Like, how did you guys grow? Was it sort of just like handing out flyers and like meeting people like on the ground, or was it more like social media stuff?
Oh, it was completely on the ground, I think. Mm-hmm. Like some of us were already sort of like using vans to transport food around the borough and around the city during the COVID pandemic, and that grew into this. We also have like a sister bodega out in LA that coined the name.
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, so they started with just like, they have like a sedan and a sign that says People's Bodega, and we saw that and we messaged them on Instagram and we were like, how do you feel about us doing this in New York? And they were like, totally. And we both kind of like, we grew into like very different things, but also really similar. Like the People's Bodega in LA has like a free fridge and it does different pop-ups. It doesn't operate out of a truck, but it's very much the same ethos of just like giving stuff away for free. Okay. And then ours, of course, has a New York flavor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. The growth was so rapid because during the summer, we had an opportunity. There were protests every single day, as you know. Yeah. So there were just about 6 of us kind of doing it at the incept, and we all just committed to making it our entire summer. So people just saw us around a lot, and then they started to donate money, and then that allowed us to purchase this truck in August, and then it was on.
Yeah, also it's important to know that there are a lot more of us that are very, very active in this group, and we are just the representatives of that group.
Gotcha. Was it difficult to like get a box truck around the city during protests? Like what was that like?
Yeah, a lot of us we like all come from like art and film and music backgrounds, and so a good chunk of us have some experience lugging shit around in a truck in the city. Right. I guess the big difference was like the thousands of people in front of you and the hundreds of cop cars behind you. But it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah, my general rule is I rarely have a reason to bring the truck up like above 30 miles an hour. I'm happy to take it easy and take it slow, especially when we're in these oceans of boats. Yeah, but also very fun. It's the first vehicle that I've ever owned in my life.
Well, I mean, everyone owns it, kind of. No one really owns it. but we all own it, I guess. The people own it. It's the people's bodega.
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is like so amazing because you guys are really keeping these movements alive. I know you guys played like an integral role with like the Ride to DC. Have you guys thought about venturing out to other cities, or like is there a specific, like, do you guys have like different centralized like teams of volunteers in different boroughs? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about like if you guys are thinking expanding at all?
I mean, there are so many other efforts that are very similar to ours in other cities that we, try to reach out to and communicate with them as regularly as we can. In terms of like taking the rig on the road, I mean, it's something that we're really interested in serving the need in our community. So we're pretty focused on that at the moment. Like we have a bunch of different projects going on right now that are very central. I mean, it's hard enough getting it out to different boroughs, and we have some of us are in Brooklyn, some of us are in Queens. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like what need has to be served, right? Like if there is a reason to, then it's always a possibility. But for now, we're really focused on like keeping New York good as much as we can and keeping our communities like safe and fed.
That brings up a good point. Have you guys like, can you tell me a little bit about like the other teams that you've partnered with? Like where have you seen the most help come from? Has it just been like organic donors, or has it been just like different groups that have like just volunteered their help?
I mean, we work a lot with the Astoria Food Pantry and the Queens Liberation Project are two people that we do a lot of projects with, and they're both really amazing.
That's what you guys started from. Like a lot of you guys were all a part of the Astoria mutual aid, right?
Mm-hmm. A bunch of us were, yeah. But really, I think organically, like we try not to centralize like our communications and our actions so much. Like they're very open-ended, and we don't really necessarily feel the need to like align ourselves with particular groups. Rather, we want to align ourselves with like a broader community and sort of let people know that this project is not like so enclosed. Like anyone can do what we're doing, and it can be on any different type of scale. So it's kind of like an open door, but also, it's very, it's hard to describe, I guess. But I guess we're just interested in like being open and be like directly participating in our communities and collaborating with whoever also is like down,
Just to give a particular shout out to Lifeline Groceries, who we work with quite regularly, and they've been doing amazing food security and food justice work since the start of everything a year ago. And they are our partner on this, actually.
Well, thank you for like bringing them to our attention as well. I think just what you guys are doing is like so great that like we just need to. That's why I wanted to like have you guys here, just so we can speak a little about that. So do you think that like definitely, I feel like people have gotten motivated to get out there and speak out against like just pretty much. I feel like people have become more aware of all the injustice that's happening around them on a day-to-day basis, and like we could see it happening today. Like there's protests going on. So have you guys seen your like volunteer numbers increase, or do you guys like having just like a small tight-knit team?
We do certain projects that involve large groups of people. We recently did this project where when there were really long lines to vote, we also don't necessarily politically align ourselves with anything in particular, but we thought it was important that people were able to comfortably vote and not be oppressed by long lines. So we sort of mobilized a large group of volunteers around the city to scout out different polling locations and create like a network, letting each other know how long the lines were and where they were at and what kind of stuff they needed. And then we would load people up with like signs and gear and food and water. and coloring books, and like send them out to different polling places to make sure people stayed on the line and like sustained it. And I think a lot of the work we do is about like sustaining a movement, right? You know, you're talking about the sort of a continuation of protests and demonstrations and stuff like that. Our central role, I think, in this environment and in this time right now is to make sure that people continue in whatever aspect that means. So if that's like staying on a line to make sure you get to vote through voter suppression, if that means giving somebody water so they can continue to like march, if that means like holding food drives so we can supply food pantries that are getting annihilated by the state and losing their funding so we can feed people. It's all kind of part of like sustaining the movement, right? Sustaining community care and stuff like that.
And to your point, us continuing this work even after the majority of the protest action in New York City has kind of quieted.
For now.
For now, but it is a reminder to keep people volunteering. And even if it's not people directly volunteering with this group, the amount of volunteer work that we witness on a weekly basis, and even people who come up to us at any of our free stores or anything are like, yo, can we do this? Can we volunteer with you? I'm always just like, yeah, just get a backpack, get a truck, and just do it.
Or like a car, or like a granny cart.
Just do it. So it is to encourage that reminder that we all have a lot more free time these days, and the nature of work is changing, and our understanding of volunteerism and the way that we dedicate our time is also changing too. And that is an important part of the project.
Well, that makes me think about like what's like a particular difficulty you guys come across that like people listening to this could say like, oh, I could help with that.
A difficulty that I think is it's when you really like doing something, yeah, there are like snags and stuff, but every difficulty is just a fun problem to solve. I'm trying to think
we just want to know, like for us, where the need is. Like yesterday, we had an opportunity to scoop up over 50 boxes of food, of bread that was going to be wasted from a bakery in the Bronx, like a giant industrial bakery. And then once we loaded up the truck with all this bread, the big question was where does this need to go and how can it be best utilized in the next 3-4 days while it is still good? And we're doing a project right now where we are going out a few times a month to connect with our neighbors who are living outside and give out sleeping bags and tents and warm clothes and stuff like that. And we polled, our direct digital community being like, where are your neighbors living who are living outside right now? And we got a huge response back, and it made it, that was the kind of support that we needed. We just need to know where the need is.
Yeah.
Because we live in our own bubbles too.
I think like if someone is inclined to do this type of work, it's definitely important to like meet your neighbors and spend time in your community. There's a difference like people use the phrase in community, right? Or in solidarity. And I think what those phrases mean is like, not only just living in a place, but also like understanding that place and understanding who is around you and how they live and how you live and the similarities and the differences of that. Like just fundamentally, especially because of the pandemic, people have been spending time in more like enclosed environments, right? Like spending time in your neighborhood. And maybe that means like knowing people's names and, knowing where people hang out and what they do, and not just, the people that you like go get drunk with, but like, the guys that like own the store down the street or the lady on your block. Like it could even be as simple as like, like bringing somebody groceries on your block once a week who like isn't mobile. This type of work starts really small, and that's just as important as the larger picture, right? Because that's what being in community really means.
That sounds fun too. I feel like people don't tend to think of that stuff as fun, or like doing that kind of thing like enriches your life. It's like some people just like don't feel like if they feel inclined to do that, they might be like, oh, this seems like awkward or like I'm socially anxious or something, but it's actually good, not just for the people you're doing it for, but like also for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, this type of, we were so in a weird way, we became very social during the pandemic because of this work. And at least personally, it kept me from losing my mind, and just like human interaction is really important. So it's nice. And it's nice to make lots of new friends that are of all different ages. It's cool. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, rewarding in many ways. I'm someone who never has any money, and there's so many things that I want to help with, but through a project like this, as open-ended as this, as broad as this, I've been able to discover that using my time is just as valuable as donating a shitload, the American way, donating a shitload of money to a cause. But for me, giving up my time has taught me. I've learned more this year than I have ever learned in my life. Mm-hmm. And it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's go into a little bit more of the lighthearted questions. What's some of the craziest, most wild things you've seen on the road?
It's hard to answer. But I mean, you see all sorts of wacky shit when you're driving around all the time. It's like, I can't even think of an example.
I mean, I've seen some amazing and beautiful and wild expressions of liberation and joy from the truck seat that have just brought me to tears. We have also, in the thick of the summer when things were like boiling, we saw a number of nasty fights and people really freaking out and losing their minds, and some face-off is like between groups. But honestly, I see that and I remember those less because I care about them less than just seeing people liberated in the street and just loving the feeling of freedom and expressing feelings of justice.
I saw a rat king when we were driving through the Lower East Side. We were driving through a lot, and I just passed some lot, an empty lot in the Lower East Side, and I saw it was like the rats have taken back the city. There was like 10 to 15 rats just like climbing all over each other, and it was really cool because I've never seen them before, and I felt very safe because I was in a vehicle far away from the rats.
So I just wanted to pretty much wrap things up. I just so you guys can get back to what you're doing, but I wanted to thank you. And is there anything else you guys would like to say to our viewers?
I guess just to clarify, the group that we're splitting the donation money with, Lifeline Grocery Initiative, they deliver food to people who do not qualify for government assistance and are out of work. So that's people who can't collect unemployment, people with like mixed status and things like that. And it's I think around 800 people every week. And all of the food is whole produce and healthy grains, and it's completely free. So that's the group that we partnered with. And other than that, if you want to keep in touch with what we're doing, you can follow us on Instagram, and that is our only social media platform.